It's recording.
Hey, what's going on? This is episode 1 of Needle Movers, where we talk to Shopify Plus founders and the brightest minds in e-commerce to see what's actually moving the needle. And today I'm joined with Julian, the co-founder of Convertibles, which is a boutique Shopify CRO agency and a brilliant mind in on-site optimization. We're going to have an amazing conversation around a couple topics on on-site optimization, how to squeeze more revenue per site visitor, where the CRO industry is going. Julian, welcome.
Thanks, Clay. Thanks for having me on the first episode of our or your podcast. So we'll try to keep not very awkward since we talk every day, and we discuss most things many times. But probably try to bring some fresh POVs and mainly get the tech down, and then you can have some great guests on.
I love it. Yeah, for full disclosure, if anybody is going through our archives, Julian and I are co-founders at Convertibles, and we've run thousands of Shopify A/B tests for brands over the last several years, and super excited to dive in and talk about it. But first, Julian, I'd love to get a little bit more of a background into how you ended up in on-site optimization in the Shopify ecosystem. I know a little bit about your transition from full-time developer to more into optimization role. Do you want to walk us through that career background?
Yeah, so I was a Shopify dev for about, I forget now, but it's probably 7 to 8 years before we started the agency. So it was purely Shopify development. Worked at a few companies. Then I did a bunch of freelancing, and that's when we met with you. And then what really got me thinking about CRO is you had a client at that point which you wanted to run a test for, and you needed some dev support on that, and that's when you dropped me a line, and then we kind of set up the test technically. And luckily for us, it was a winning test, which was a great result for the brand, and it kind of opened my eyes to, because it took me about 2 hours to kind of develop the test, but the leverage on that time was much bigger than me just developing for brands or for companies, because the test made a lot of money for the company. So it was just if I was charging $75 an hour and then the test made a lot of money for the brand, it's just better leverage on my time, and it's just a more interesting I think function of development, because it then gets overlaid with a lot of insights, brand research. It's just more multi-layered, and I was always interested in kind of business on a higher level than just doing development per some wireframes. So luckily for us, that the first test that I was ever involved in was a successful one, and that's what kind of got us into just doing higher leverage work around Shopify.
Yeah, getting paid for results, not time.
Yeah.
I remember it was on the CTA block, 12% lift, 95% plus stats, so you got a 12% to revenue per visitor. And it was like a 5-figure contract. But yeah, it only took us a few labor hours. We had to run the test for a month. Yeah. But and the client happily cleared that invoice, and it kind of was a no-brainer then. There's a lot of improvements to be made on brand sites. And now we look at a website and we're like, there's a lot that can be done and tested here.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I worked, like I said, for many years in many companies before that, and not a single company ran a test like an A/B test or split test, and it was just all based on opinions and the CMO likes this, or they see something from another website. But now with our experience, we see that many of those implementations could actually be costing brands money. So it's really unless you test something in a split testing environment, it is a black box of changes that you don't even know if they're hurting the brand or helping it. And if you don't know it's helping, then it's just a lot of wasted efforts. And I've seen it happen over and over again. Brand redesigns, a new CMO comes in, and the first thing is to always redesign the website. Doesn't really move the needle. But it costs many labor hours, a lot of money, a lot of time, and it's just wasted work. So that's another reason why I think just testing is so much more efficient way of building the business or the brand.
Yep. For an e-com founder who is aware of conversion rate optimization but has not done it, how would you describe conversion rate optimization from the perspective of a Shopify Plus store owner?
Yeah, well,
How should
it's
they think about it?
basically, yeah, I think that like to boil it down, it's basically running multiple versions of the website at the same time, and then just seeing which one makes more money, and then that could be scaled to
I
very
like it. I
complex.
like it's
Yeah,
really to the point.
yeah, that's how I explain
Yeah.
it to my friends. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then you can, of course, the scale of that could be from very simple tests, copy changes, moving
Hmm.
stuff around or changing colors, to very complex tests.
Yep.
Yeah,
I do think a lot of brands underestimate how technical and like the skill requirement of CRO, because within a CRO shop, a good one, you should have all the skills of a development shop to be able to make a design pixel perfect and performant. But on top of that, launch multiple versions, do the analysis, know what to build to improve performance, because you're optimizing a site that's already been built with a best effort to perform. Could you talk through what are some of the areas of CRO that most brand owners would not be aware of, where there's an enormous amount of skill required or technical skill required?
yeah. So yeah, that is true. Because for any change on a website, you usually look at a wireframe and then you just go implement. So it's basically whatever. If it's an existing section, you just overwrite what it looks like and you just redesign it. Then that goes live on the website. But in CRO, especially in our case, we do usually multi-variation testing. So we need to keep the existing section, then we need to build a few versions of that section, and then hide and toggle based on variation. Then we need to keep that in mind for how that interacts with all the other parts of the page where that section lives on. And then usually there's one stage of where we develop tests. It's just to test it, so the implementation is not as polished. Because then we just want to get the data point. But then after, let's say the test is a winner, then we need to kind of go back to the drawing board, make sure that we delete all the leftover code from the test, and then make that implementation into a section that's customizable and editable for brand owners. So we take away the tech debt of that section. So it is. We've seen that in experience in our operations with multi-variation testing. It's just basically building 4 or 5 functionalities instead of one, and then you test those. And then there's a lot of interplay between different apps. If it's a card drawer, especially difficult component to test on. There's a lot of apps injecting stuff, so it's even harder to test on because you need to kind of inject on top of an app that it's injecting on the website.
Right.
So it's quite complicated. Yeah, it's much more complicated than just running a dev shop operation where you just change something.
Right. I think what all brand owners want to know is, and let's use the example of, say, Shopify Plus brand. They're at 10 million a year. They're spinning tires though. They've been at 10 million a year for a year. No growth rate, no decline. They've never done CRO. They have like a $60 AOV consumer product kind of impulsive buy. With 1 year of dedicated CRO, what kind of results could they expect?
Yeah, you're probably better estimating those than me. But yeah, that depends. It's tough to. Yeah, I think you really give a better answer to that. But we have seen it's a slower process. I think we need to manage expectations, like for everyone listening, that it is a slower compounding process. There's a lot of insights that you need to gather. Then you need to implement tests, test them, deploy the winners. Only a percentage of every test ran is a winner. So that slowly starts compounding. But I think you can't afford not to test because of the reasons that I spoke to in the beginning, because it's just guessing pretty much, which is, we are surprised sometimes which variations win. So imagine like someone who's hasn't seen that many tests, it's just going to be losing money. But at least any changes, kind of that's the basic level. Any changes that want to be implemented from the marketing team or whatever should be tested. But yeah, in terms of results, I think it would vary. But maybe, I don't know, what's your kind of estimate on a yearly effort of?
Yeah, I think yearly, and a brand that's going full force can be launching 50 experiments a year. with multiple variations, call it 100 to 150 variations. And even with a very modest 10% win rate per variation, or maybe 30% per test, 1 in 3 tests winning, you're deploying 15 winning variations on the site. And even if each one is a small 5% lift to AOV or conversion rate on some smaller part of the site, the homepage, the product, one of the key product pages, these can compound to 30, 40, 50% lifts year over year in conversion rate. But even if it's only, say, a 20% lift globally in the business, I think what business owners are all looking for is competitive advantages on ads. So now if you're squeezing 20% more revenue per visitor, per click, now you're leveraged and you can go buy twice as much traffic, say, on Meta, because your unit economics have fundamentally changed. So even it's like a leveraged investing. 20% lift in conversion rate can allow you to buy 5 times as much traffic on Meta. And that's what we see play out with brands that are very play heavy on paid ads. And just why conversion rate optimization is so important for brands built on paid ads in particular.
Yeah, and we've seen that working with brands, it's like you can see that upward trend, but the other thing is if a brand is on a decline or there's a problem within that industry, like optimizing the website would keep that trend line flat, which is a win in that case.
Right.
But yeah, probably Amazon was the kind of the pioneer of testing a lot of stuff on the website, and then we kind of the CRO industry took over from that. But it's I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, I'm kind of biased, but not really as well, because it's just so much data that you can't make changes to the website based on guesses and opinions and copying other brands, or it just doesn't translate always. So we need to be testing it.
One of the things you talk about on Twitter is storytelling as the next frontier with CRO. Could you talk a little bit about what you mean by that? What kind of results you've seen with brands that introduce that, and how practically that gets applied on a website?
Yeah, well, I think everything kind of saturates at some point, and we follow a lot of CRO agencies and the types of tests that are being run. It's very similar tests, just on kind of similar components of the website, similar types of tests. But I think the next iteration, and probably also I've seen that from people posting about Facebook content or ads content in general, is that it needs to evolve into storytelling. Like there needs to be something more on the website in terms of a brand, and a brand is going to be more than just a consistent color palette or a font. Like it needs to be something that's memorable. And oftentimes, I think the interesting thing is if you optimize the store, like that's one win. But if you actually tell a great story on it and have a memorable brand, that might even outperform a non-optimized store. It's just, I had a personal example of I was a big fan of Patagonia, the clothing company, just because of the storytelling that they do and the brand that they have. And the checkout was broken for like 3 weeks for some reason, like on my laptop. But I just kept coming back and refreshing the checkout. Like that's, if you don't have that draw in terms of a brand, you're just gonna, of course, bounce immediately. But if you tell a great story, then that kind of overrides and skips over all the little optimizations that you can do on the website, and it's just a whole different level of even conversion. So I think it's connected to offers and storytelling and branding, but I think it's the next level of CRO that not many brands are doing actually, and the ones that are doing it, of course, are growing fast. But
yeah, I think for us, like when we do research on a brand, one of the top objections that we'll see is a price objection, especially in premium brands. People just complain it's too expensive. And how do you fight a price objection? You can do some things like anchor pricing. You can bundle. You can do like buy more and save type of things. There's ways you can offer the financial incentive. But I really think that, and we've seen some of the best results with just blocks of storytelling where there's always a story to be told about the care, the material, how it's made, how the company was started, how much they care about their customers, what their values are. And those stories justify the higher price, especially if they're communicated well to the consumer. and it builds affinity with the brand. So it's, I mean, we have some recent tests that are running that have just insane results, like 20% lift of revenue per visitor on the homepage with a storytelling block,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Yeah, I think most brands, they're just listing products on the website and hoping for ads to kind of carry the business.
Yes.
But yeah, that is a business model, but the higher level plays actually storytelling and branding, like done through storytelling.
Yep. Do you want to, one of the last things I wanted to talk about was research and risk taking. How do you view risk taking with regards to on-site and optimization? What is something that would be considered risky, and how can brands have the confidence to invest in those types of experiments?
Yeah, it's difficult because we've seen with some clients or with some brands, they're very creative driven, which is the opposite of data, I guess, data driven and test averse a little bit. But it's risky to be stuck in just an internal creative team loop of where they're just discussing which colors look better and which fonts look better, and there is a level of professionalism that it needs to, when you go on a website, it needs to look consistent. But I think thinking it over too much, it stops or it slows down a testing program by quite a lot. Like the velocity gets really slowed down, which inevitably is just costing brands money, because if you're not testing, like, you don't know what to optimize for.
Right.
So it's a fine balance, but yeah, we always advocate, let's run the test. It's only a test. Let's say 20% of the traffic will see it. It's not going to be it's not a fatal change.
Right.
And then let's get the data point and then decide whether we deploy or not. But a data point could also be used from CRO. It could be used business-wide, so it can go to the email team, to the ads team, or whatever. And then we can stop the test and not even roll out the change. But I think a good portion of what we do is to educate and convince brands to be just more, I guess, brave, I guess, on testing, and then we can take that data point and decide what to do with it. But yeah, we just don't want to be slowed down in too much, design iteration loops of, pixel pushing and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. The last thing was, so we named this podcast Needle Movers, and at Convertibles, our core product is called Needle Movers. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about what Needle Movers is and some of the philosophy behind our testing methodology when we get a new Shopify Plus brand, come in, they want to run CRO? What is Needle Movers, and why is that the system that we've implemented?
Yeah, so it came from the philosophy was that how do we test on the most impactful things all the time? So we needed to constrain ourselves by design where we actually test. It also streamlines the ideation process, since we know which components will be tested. There's less of a thinking time, whether it's, when we're tackling a problem, is it going to be on the footer or the homepage banner? So the philosophy was to really constrain ourselves into the most impactful components, which in our case, we've nailed it down to 12. Some of them are page components. So for the page components, we just do the first two folds. We've seen many heat maps after the first two folds, like 5, 10, 15% of people get there. So it doesn't really make sense to even test that. Then it goes back to the kind of design discussion. There's a lot of effort of creative teams, designing months of like a page. Let's say the homepage is something that could be designed for months, but then only 20% of that page gets seen ever. So why waste that effort? And then so we have 12 components. We order them by page traffic, so depending on the funnel dynamics of the business, which is another constraint that adds just focus to the testing program. Let's say all the ads are going to the product page. From then, the journey would usually be product page, checkout, home page, and collection page are less important. Of course, some people will go back and check those, but they're just not yet needle movers. So Yeah, we just focus on the most impactful things, and it streamlines our internal processes as well.
That's awesome. And then where can people find you and learn more about convertibles?
Yeah, our website is Convertibles.dev, and I'm Julian's Digital, I think, on Twitter. I'm not sure. I need to check actually. But yeah, quite active on X. Yeah, it's Julian's Digital. It's kind of a weird handle, but yeah, that's the one.
Well, Julian, it was a pleasure talking about CRO optimization, where the needle moving areas of focus are for brands. And I'm excited to chop this up, get it live on our site, get it live on socials, and kick off a podcast style content stream for the brand.
Nice. Thanks, Clay. Looking forward to all the guests you have on. Some great combos.
Can't wait.